Hello and welcome to VCC TV. This is Joseph Rai. Last year, the government launched the Startup India, Stand Up India program with much fanfare. It's been 1 year, so it's difficult to decide whether the program has been successful or not. And now what we are learning is that the government is planning to launch a VC fund aimed at the minorities and the depressed classes. To understand more about that, we have with us Aman Malik, Senior Assistant Editor. Now, Aman, this is not the first time the government is launching a VC fund aimed at the Dalits or, the minorities or the depressed in the classes.
Right.
But the first time it was launched, it was a failure. So how do you think this particular fund is going to be different from the first fund that was launched by the previous government?
Okay, so this is actually, this is going by a report in the Economic Times, and there are very few details. This is actually the first time that the government would be launching a fund aimed at minorities and depressed classes. Earlier, the fund that was launched was actually done by the Dalit Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and it was supported by the government. And this was aimed at Dalit entrepreneurs who belong to the scheduled castes. So therefore, it was, if we can say, it was a semi-government sort of a fund. It was called the Dalit DVF, Dalit Chamber of Commerce Venture Fund. This was launched in 2012, 1 year after it was proposed by the then Planning Commission, led by former Planning Commission Vice Chairman Montek Singh Ahluwalia. They had ambitions of essentially raising up to about 500 crore rupees. Okay. But by July 2015, if I remember correctly, they kind of nearly shut shop because the banks and lending institutions were simply not interested. Now, what the Economic Times tells us is that the government is again mulling launching a fund. We do not know what is going to be the corpus of such a fund, and when they say minorities, do they mean religious minorities, entrepreneurs who are non-Hindu, if I may put it very directly, who may be Muslims or Christians or Sikhs or from other non-Hindu communities, or do they also include Dalits? But what ET says is that they are minorities and people from the scheduled tribes, the STs. Now, if it's being done, it's a good thing, but I hope the government has a plan in mind so that it does not fail again.
All right. So you say it is a good thing, and especially in a country like India, which is very diverse, a lot of people are underprivileged, and the fruits of the growth do not trickle down to them. So, how can such a fund be really made effective?
You have to realize that the ticket size of most such entrepreneurships, which are actually going to be, led by Dalit entrepreneurs, I'm not saying all, but most, or entrepreneurs in the minorities who have been unrepresented or underrepresented when it comes to entrepreneurship itself. The ticket size will be small and the gestation periods will be longer. So at the end of the day, every fund has to be profitable. But I think the return on investments that such a fund should aim for, although it should be profitable, and the investors who are coming into the fund or putting their money into the fund should go back with a profit. But I don't think those profit expectations should be sky high. So, and they should also allow for longer gestation periods, because this is more of a social exercise that this is not necessarily just for the motive of a profit. Having said that, I reiterate, it cannot be a loss-making exercise, because then it will not sustain. It is a good thing. It has happened in other countries as well by way of affirmative action. And if it happens and if it takes off, what it will do is it will broad base entrepreneurship in India.
So you mentioned that similar kind of funds have been launched in other countries as well. Tell us about that and what India can learn from them.
What we know is that at least we know of a couple of funds in the US. Mm-hmm. One is it was, I think, launched in 2015. Mm-hmm. It's called the First Founders Capital Fund, FFCP. Now, they basically cater to US based minorities, and the other fund is a New York based fund that is supported by Comcast Ventures, that also caters to minority communities. So what we do know is that, like the story that I've done today, it alludes to a certain study that was done in about 2013. In the 1990s, a plethora of such funds came into being, and they were actually fairly profitable. Okay, but somehow, inexplicably, this trend kind of died down over time. I'm still not clear why it died down, but it did die down. But the fact that in the 1990s, a plethora of such funds came, and now they want to come back again, means that there is untapped potential. There is an area where people can actually get into and, you know, sort of reap some decent profits out of and serve communities. Please understand one more thing. If it's a Dalit entrepreneur or an entrepreneur from the minority community, one way or the other, if you fund them and if he or she can raise a profitable business, it will also help his community and larger family and larger community at large.
Thank you so much, Raman, for this insight.
Thanks, Joseph.
And a VC fund like the one that the government is planning aimed at minorities is definitely a necessity, but the government has to ensure that it's effectively implemented. Thank you so much for watching VCC TV.